I want to welcome everybody here this afternoon. We're going to do features and benefits of jets and centrifugals. So we're going to start out by talking about high pressure booster pumps. And you can see by looking at these pictures here, a high pressure booster pump is nothing more than a submersible liquid end on a jet pump motor. That's all that it really is. All right. You can see that you can put them horizontal like this. I have had people mount them on the wall vertical. When you mount them on the wall vertical, you want the motor facing the top. You don't want the motor facing the bottom. And the reason for that is, should there be leakage, if the motor's facing the bottom, it can have water dripping into it. Whereas if you've got that motor facing to the top, if it leaks, it's going to go down. It's not going to hurt anything. All right? So high pressure booster pumps come in 1/2 to 3 horsepower. They run with the Regal motor. Now, it used to be called A.O. Smith, but Regal bought them out a couple years ago now. They all have the same flow ranges, 7, 10, 20, and 30. They all have a working pressure of 315 psi. Now, of course, that's at shut off, and you really don't want to run the pump there. So be very careful that when you're using this pump, you don't leave that turned off for very long. A suction lift to 15 feet. I'm not going to tell you they're easy to prime, but they don't do too bad, and they can lift water up to 15 feet. You can get high pressure hoses, spray guns, and nozzles available through us. You need to just look in the catalog, and they'll tell you what part numbers to order. And again, you can mount them permanent, or you can make them portable. They've got a handle that goes with them, so you put the handle on there, and of course now you can pick that pump up and move it wherever you want to move it to. Where does it get used at? Filtration and reverse osmosis. They usually require some high pressures to get through the membranes, and so that's one of the jobs this pump is used for. Pressure boosting, car wash. If you've been any car washes, they need to have high pressure there. Residential. In other words, we sell these to people that use them to spray their house, clean their house off, and so forth. And then lastly is commercial and agricultural. When they use them for commercial and agricultural, a couple of different applications. One is chicken farming. What they do with chicken farming is they use this high pressure pump to spray high pressure water into the chicken coops. And as the water comes out of the nozzle, it comes out so fast that it turns into a mist, and they use that to cool the chickens. They do the same thing for cattle too. You can use it in the cattle area where you're misting. Anybody ever been to a state fair? You know that at your state fairs, they have people misters. Same application. All you do is you run high pressure water through your system, and then have some very small nozzles, and that makes that water break up as it comes out, and it turns into a mist. So we've got 4 brands. We've got Air Motor. They come as single phase only. We've got Berkeley. They come as single or 3-phase. Myers is single phase only, and Stay Right is single phase or 3-phase. I want you to understand that the ODP motors used in our single phase applications all are UL, so you've got a UL listed pump there if you use an ODP motor on it. Okay. Materials, it's 300 series stainless steel for suction and discharge. Now they both have a stainless steel suction and discharge, but they also both offer, I say both, I'm talking all 4 lines, offer cast iron suction and discharge. So you can get them either way. And of course, again, we're talking about just the suction and discharge. We're not talking the stack. We're not talking the shell. We're talking cast iron suction and discharge or stainless steel suction and discharge. You can get the motors in single or 3-phase, especially if you're using Berkeley or Stay Right. They come 50 or 60 hertz, so if you're selling them someplace other than the United States, you may want to check and see, do they need 50 hertz. The enclosure types, ODP or TEFC. Now remember, TEFC, you don't get service factor in TEFC. So you can get this pump either way, totally enclosed, fan cooled, or open drip proof. Maximum temperatures. The internals on these pumps are made out of acetate and polycarbonate. So because of that, 140 degrees is the maximum temperature that you can run that water through there. All right. I want to just tell you a quick story. We had another application for it. We had a company out in Gloucester, Virginia, that was using this pump to add chlorine to their water system. All right, what they would do is they pulled a line off of their main line, ran it through the pump, and then on the discharge side of the pump, they had a suction line that was connected to a chlorine dispenser. And the velocity of the water moving past that suction line would pull that chlorine in, mix it with the water, and that's how they got their chlorine in their city water. And they called me up one day and they said, hey, your pump's not working. What can we do? And I said, well, what's wrong with it? And they said, well, it's making noise. I'm sure it's a warranty. And I said, well, I don't know. I said, have you got a discharge valve on the discharge side of the pump? Nope, there's no valves over there at all. None? Nope. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. You send the pump back to me. I'll take it out on the lines. I'll have them test it. If it truly is a warranty, we'll warranty the pump. So they said, okay, and they sent the pump back. I took it out to the lines. I had the lines tested. They hooked it up to their testing machine and said, yeah, there's a lot of noise going on there. We probably forgot to do something. So, yeah, it's a warranty. So I called the guy back up and I said, well, all right, the line says it's a warranty, so we'll give you a warranty on it. He said, well, I need another one right away. And I looked on the computer and I said, well, there's not one there. Let me see what I can do. So I called the guys up on the line and I said, okay, what's going on? What don't you have? And they said, well, we don't have the motor. And I said, well, our warranty says fix or replace, so fix it. Put a new stack on that motor. And so as they took the stack apart, they found out that it wasn't their fault. Half the stack was gone. And of course, that's because there was a valve on the discharge side. And because they had closed the valve on the discharge side, forgot to open it up. And then, of course, what winds up happening? The water, it gets so hot, well over 140 degrees, that it melts those plastic parts down. So you do have to be careful. When we say 140 degrees, that really is something that you have to take care of. Okay, it's not a hot water pump. There are special internals. We have a thrust pad on each side of the impeller. Now, that's a little different from our 4-inch submersibles. On our 4-inch submersibles, we've only got a thrust pad on the downside, but here there's a thrust pad on each side. That, of course, because you're getting actual movements on this. Time for another poll. In our second poll, we're going to ask the question, do you know the difference between a model number and a catalog number? So I'm going to open it up here and let you guys figure it out here. The answer is real simple. Yes, no, or no answer. So you decide which is best for you. The bottom line is here, and yep, some of you do and some of you don't. Now, the point is, a model number tells us about the pump. The catalog number is how I order that pump. So let's take a look here. Here's some jet pumps. And of course, remember, we've got 4 brands, so there's all the different brands there. I'm going to break down each one of these. We'll start out with air motor, and you can see we've got an FH50 and an HNS 100. The first part of that model number there indicates the series that the pump is in. Now, air motor doesn't have a large selection of jet pumps. You can see there's an FH, an FHSN, the HNS, and the VAN2. So those are the different series of pumps. And then on the other side there you see it says 50 is half force, 75 is 3/4, 101, 150, 1.5, and 200 is 2 horsepower. That's the largest that we go with any jet pumps is 2 horsepower. So that's your air motor model number. Berkeley uses the 5SN-01, and you can see I've colorized each of the different things to help you understand what they mean. For example, that 5 starts out with horsepower. So 5 is half, 7 is 3/4, 10 is 1, 15 is 1.5, 20 is 2. Remember, 2 horsepower is the largest we go on a jet pump. They have several different series here. I don't think I've got all of them listed even. There's the SN, the HN, the PN, the HL, the MS. There's more. There's more series. I couldn't fit them all on here. So that's just to tell you what type of series it is. I will tell you this, that N in the part number, whether it's SN, HN, or PN, that N indicates that it is a designated shallow well pump. You've got an HL, there's also a PL and an SL. That L indicates that it is a convertible pump, meaning that you can run it as a shallow well or as a deep well. The MS is the vertical multi-stage pump, and that is considered to be a deep well pump only. And then the -01 is a manufacturer's revision number, and it just means that something was changed in the way it got put together. Typically, the curve stays the same, everything else stays the same. It's just they used a different material of construction or something like that. All right? Now, Myers, we've got an HJ-100D-01, and the HJ, again, this is your series design. So there's the MPN, which is a designated shallow well. It's got that N in there. The QD is a shallow well. The MPL is a convertible. And then you've got the HR, the HJ, and the HC, HCM. Just in case you didn't guess already, PN and PL are a stay-right pump that were painted green to put in the Myers line, so they had a little extra choice, and that's why that N and L are in there. You can see from the other numbers, which are actually Myers nomenclature, that they don't use H and L normally. Okay, because they do use the stay-right pump in their line, they also use the nomenclature for the stay-right horsepower. C is half, D is 3/4, E is 1, F is 1.5. But of course, the Myers nomenclature goes 50 is half, 75 is 3/4, 100 is 1, 150 is 1.5, and yes, they do have a 2-horse also that goes 200. S means that it's a shallow well pump. D means it's a deep well pump. D actually is a convertible pump, whereas S means you're going to get that jet bolted right on the pump. If you order an HJ100D, you're going to get a separate jet, and you can put it down the well then. And again, there's a manufacturer's revision number just in case there's things that we've changed. All right. Stay right. I've got two model numbers here, an SND-L and an HLE-01. Again, you'll notice by the color, HL and SN, those are series designs. Again, I do not have them all in there. There's SN, HN, SL, HL, MS, HMS, PL, PN, FN, FL. Oh, there's a ton of them. Okay, so Stay Right does have a lot of jet pumps. And then there's the horsepower designation. Stay Right was started in 1934 by the then president of A.O. Smith, and he wanted to make a pump that would stay right. That's how they got their name, Stay Right. And A.O. Smith has always used alpha characters for horsepower. So C is a half, D is 3/4, E is 1, F is 1.5, G is 2. Remember, 2 horsepower is the largest jet pump you're going to get. And then you've got a manufacturer's revision number, and also the L means UL listed. Now let's take a look at some of the features here. All right, proven materials. We've got reinforced polypropylene diffusers, and we've got Lexan Venturi and nozzles. Now I want to point out just on those 2 points there that we had the largest pump company, or we were the largest pump company with the most plastics. So we made our own plastics for years. And so yes, we really helped develop that kind of stuff. They use a square D adjustable pressure switch. There are 2 different square D switches, just so you know. And so the S series pump uses the less expensive one. The H series pump uses the more expensive one. The difference is the less expensive one only has the main screw that holds the cover on the square D pressure switch, whereas the more expensive one has a second screw in there, which allows you to set the off pressure, so you can change your off pressure on those pumps. You can't do that with the standard pump, okay? You've got the shallow well built in jet, or the deep well provides the jet options. Remember, when we say deep well, we're talking convertible, so you can use it shallow or deep. And then, of course, the deep well also includes a pressure gauge. What makes it serviceability here is that it is a standard 1.25" suction, 1-inch discharge. Just about everybody's got that. There is an easy access clean out plug for your nozzle. And so on the very front of the pump, on your shallow well jet pump, on the very front of the pump, you'll find a pipe plug. When you take that pipe plug out, that takes you right into the back of the nozzle. So if something is plugging it up, you can get in there and unplug it without taking the whole pump apart. Now, that's not to say that sometimes you don't have to take the pump apart, but if things work out well, you wouldn't have to. There's a pro-style composite switch tube connectors. In other words, what we're using here is we're using a tube connector where you just simply push in on the connector and you can push the tube in or pull the tube off. It used to be in the old days that they had bayonet fittings, and with those bayonet fittings, basically you were going to cut that tube, and then you'd have to cut the portion of the tube off that you cut, and then you had to hope that the tube was long enough that you could reconnect it. Otherwise, you had to buy a new tube. But with these new tube connectors, you don't have to worry about that. Built-in pressure regulator on your deep well pumps. It's not on the shallow well, they don't need it, but on your convertible type pumps there are actually two chambers, and one of those chambers has a hole in it, and that connects the small chamber to the big chamber. The small chamber is where you're going to find that pressure regulator. It sits right over that hole, and basically what you're doing is you're regulating, when you're using this pump as a deep well pump, you have to regulate how much pressure you're allowing to go down to that jet, because if you don't have enough pressure going down to the jet, it's not going to work. You're going to just go in there and regulate that properly so you can set that depth to water, and that means it keeps that certain amount of pressure on that. Whatever water you get, that's what you get based on that depth to water. We do have jet kits, and we'll take a closer look at them for 2, 3, or 4-inch wells. Now again, that's the Stay Right Berkeley air motor line, not necessarily Myers. Myers has 2 and 4-inch. Okay. Let's break them down by type now. So the CJ pump, it's a Stay Right pump. It's stainless steel, corrosion resistant. It was designed for RO water. It only comes in 1 and 1.5 horsepower. It primes at 15 feet to water. It'll prime in about 3.2 minutes. That's pretty good priming. And then your performance, jet pumps typically are listed at 40 psi. So the 1 horse will do about 11 gallons a minute at 40 psi, and the 1.5 horse will do 16.2 gallons at 40 psi. Now again, this is also at 5 foot of lift. That's not including 15 foot of lift. That's 15 foot is just your priming, but your lift for this flow rate here is 5 foot. Okay, it is shallow well only. Remember, shallow well means 25 feet to water. Now, the HN HL series, you can see by the pictures there, the HN has the jet formed right into the front of the body. The HL has 2 holes. That makes it a convertible pump. All right. They're both cast iron construction. They run half, 3/4, and 1 horsepower. Fast priming at 15 feet, that shallow well will do 1.1 minutes to prime. Okay. Shallow well pumping performance. Again, this is at 5 foot. Half horsepower is 12.5 gallon. The 3/4 horsepower is 20.8, and the 1 horsepower is 28.3. Your shallow well, remember, means 25 feet to water. With the jets that you can use on here, if you put a deep well jet on, 4-inch deep well jet, 2-inch deep well jet, 3-inch deep well jet, takes you down 120 feet. Yes, remember that as you go down, your flow rate reduces. So you get down to about 120 feet, you might only be getting a gallon or a gallon and a half of water a minute, but still, you're getting something. All right? The SL series, now the only difference between the HL and the SL, if you look at these pumps, the only real difference here is the S and the H. Okay? Otherwise, the part numbers and everything else pretty much are the same. But what does it mean? Well, you'll notice that the H came in half, 3/4, and 1. If we take a look at the SL, it's got that same cast iron construction. It now goes half through 1.5. The S means standard service factor. So when we say that it's a 1.5 horse motor, on there that's a 1.5 horse pump. Believe me, it's a 1.5 horse motor on there. On your HL series, H means high service factor. When you increase the service factor, you decrease the horsepower. So 1/2 through 1/4 there would be the same as the 3/4 to 1.5 here, just so you understand that. Again, at 15 feet with that shallow well, you're going to get 1.1 minutes for priming. And here's your performance. Remember, you're 5 foot to water. 7.9 for the 1/2. All right, now remember, the 3/4, the 1, and the 1.5 are the same as the 1/2, 3/4, and 1 on the HL series. So you see the flow rates are the same also. All right. Again, just a reminder, 25 feet to water is shallow well. Anything deeper than that is considered deep well. And these can go down to 120 feet also. Your FL and FN, again, you're going to notice they're a little difference here. Not quite as big of a body there, but they are cast iron. They only come 1/2 and 3/4. They're 1.7 minutes. That's the shallow well, is 1.7 minutes at 15 feet. And the shallow well performance at 5 feet is 6.9 for the 1/2 horse and 12.5 for the 3/4 horse. So they're really a pretty decent pump. Considered a lower line pump, but for what you're getting, that's quite a bit. Again, just a reminder, 25 feet shallow well, 70 feet, because you're only doing 3/4 here, 70 feet for deep well. Now your PL and PN series, the P in there means plastic or composite. So if you look at the pictures there, you can see these have a composite pump head on them. All right. It is a glass reinforced pump body, so it's very, very tough. Obviously, because it's plastic, it's corrosion resistant. Okay. They are 1/2 to 1 horsepower in shallow well, that's your PN. And then they go 1/2 to 1.5 in your convertible, that's your PL. All right. The shallow well performance, remember we're at 5 feet to water here. 1/2 is 7.4. The 3/4 is 10.7. The 1 horse is 16.8. Remember that we only go up to 1 horsepower in shallow well, but you can take that 1.5 horse because it is a convertible pump. You can put the jet right on the front of it, and that 1.5 horse at 5 foot to water is going to give you 26.2 gallons at 40 psi when you're using it as a shallow well pump. So you put your shallow well jet on there. Performances are obviously going to change when you put the deep well jet on. At 25 feet to water for shallow well, and here we're going 120 feet to deep well again because we got our 1.5 horse back. All right, now here's a special pump. It's called the HMS series. It is a cast iron construction. You can see a nice heavy body there. It does go 3/4 to 1.5 horse. It is a dual stage impeller diffuser. So in other words, they've got 2 impellers in here and 2 diffusers in here. And so because of that, what that's going to do is that's going to increase your pressure. So your pumping performance, shallow well, 3/4 horse. Now notice it's 8.8 gallons at 40. Remember, we're at 5 feet to water here. 1 horse is 12.2 at 40, and the 1.5 horse is 15.9 at 40. If you go deep well with this one, the 3/4 is 12.8 at 40. This is at 30 feet to water. 1 horse is 17.8, and your 1.5 horse is 21.7. Here's what makes this pump so special. You can put a 1-inch pipe plug in that top hole. That's the drive hole. Yes, Stay-Right was always drive over suction. If you notice, all the other pumps we were looking at are suction over drive, but they always used to be drive over suction, and since this is a special pump, they left it the way that it was. If you plug that drive hole, now you can use it as a self-priming centrifugal pump for sprinkling. As a self-priming centrifugal pump for sprinkling at 5 feet to water, you're talking 24 gallons a minute at 40 psi, 33 at the 1 horse, and 46 at 40 with the 1.5 horse. So you can see this pump can really deliver water, and it's really got a wonderful, wonderful application here. You can use it for a lot of different things. Shallow well, again, just a reminder, 25 feet. And deep well, because this one is a 2-stage pump, Deep well is 160 feet. Remember, it's the pressure required down the well that allows you to go down deeper. So because this one creates higher pressure, because it's two-stage, you can go deeper with it. Now, the multi-stage series, the MS series. It is a cast iron construction. It's 3/4 through 2 horsepower, and notice it is vertical. Dual stage impellers and diffusers. There are actually 2 impellers and diffusers in the 3/4 and 1, and there are 3 impellers and diffusers in the 1.5 and 2. Factory installed pressure regulator. You can see that it's an external pressure regulator. It's not an internal regulator here. Okay, pressure gauge sits on top of that regulator. All right. Deep well 30 feet performance, because remember, this is considered a deep well pump only. 3/4 horse at 30 feet to water will give you 10.2 gallons at 40 psi. The 1 horse will give you 12.1. The 1.5 will give you 12.2, and the 2 will give you 12.2. The main difference between the 1.5 and the 2 is how much you're going to get as you go deeper. They have depths because there is a 3-stage pump here. Your 1.5 and 2 or 3-stage pumps, you can go down 320 feet. Now again, these are a very high pressure pump. Now, your cast iron kits, you can get shallow or deep well. They call them SD packages. They're 4-inch. The one that you're looking at there is a shallow well kit. I can tell by looking at venturi tube that's in it that it is a shallow well kit. SD means shallow or deep. There's only one body, there's only one nozzle, there's only one diffuser. So it's either going to get used as shallow or it's going to get used as deep. Now, some of them might be used as shallow or deep. Some of them are just shallow. Some of them are just deep. But that's what SD means, is shallow or deep. All right? Then we have a shallow and deep well 4-inch package that's called the CK package. And when you look at the CK package there, you're going to notice that there are multiple venturi tubes. Still only one body, only one nozzle, but multiple venturi tubes. Now, this is really, really important that you understand this, because in order to use this CK package, you have to make sure that you're putting the right venturi tube in when you put this thing on the pump. All right? If you look carefully, you'll notice the white venturi tubes are a little longer. And if you look carefully at them, on the ends of them, they actually have, the discharge side of it, they have a notch. And that notch is designed strictly for insertion. So when we insert this into the body here, we use that notch to use an air tool in there to tighten it up to torque it properly. Okay? The black venturi tubes are round all the way on the discharge side, and the reason for that is because they're going to butt up against that diffuser ring that I was pointing at when I started the presentation and told you about the factory schools. All right? So make sure that you've got the right venturi tube in there. And yes, we get phone calls all the time. Somebody will say, I hooked this pump up and I can't get it to prime. And I'll say, which venturi tube do you have? And they'll say, well, whatever one was in it, as if the other ones were just extras. And I'll say, okay, go get the other venturi tubes and tell me what the number on those venturi tubes are. And sure enough, they'll have the right one in their hand. And then I'll have to say to them, pull that jet up and put the correct venturi tube in. You won't have any problem with it priming. So how do you know which venturi tube to use? It's going to be in your catalog. So you got to have a dealer catalog, and that'll help you. Here's another poll. This is the last poll. And this poll asks that very question. And that is, where do you find the information on which venturi tube to use if you're using a CK package? And your choices are owner's manual, catalog, or a quick start guide. So I'll give you just a second here to go ahead and make your choices. All right, I see you were paying attention because you picked the catalog. It's the only place that you can find that information out. So make sure that you've got a catalog with you. All right? Now remember, we said we do make 2 and 3 inch jets. Here's a picture of a 2 or 3 inch jet. You'll notice here that it says the 2 inch jet you can get in all cast iron, or you can get it in brass. Okay? Now that's not the nozzle of Venturi, that's simply the body. All right? The nozzle and Venturi are going to be plastic. You'll notice if it's 2 inch, it's going to be AP. AP means cast iron. If it says APB, that means it's a 2 inch brass. If it ends in CP, that means it's a 3 inch. Now the only real difference here is if you look at the left-hand side of that jet, you're going to notice there are 2 cup leathers on there. On the 3 inch jet, those cup leathers are a little bigger, and they go all the way out to 3 inches. On the 2 inch jet, they only go to 2 inches. So make sure that you're using the right jet down the right pipe. You have to have the jet in the pipe in order for it to work. You can't stick that jet all the way down a pipe and then let it pop out of the other end of the pipe and expect it to work. It's not going to work. The reason for that is because those cup leathers are going to swell up, and they're going to separate the bottom of the well from the top of the well. And you're going to use the top of the well to drop your water right in, and it's going to go in the well itself. So the well casing becomes the drive pipe, and then the suction pipe is the only other pipe going down the well. You're not putting 2 pipes in here, you're just putting 1. Now, of course, that also means that you have to have the correct adapter for it. So I want you to look at these adapters here. You'll see there's view A, view B, view C, and view D. Very important, when you look at C and D, you should recognize right away view C is the old stay-right way of doing it. That one would get used on the HMS series pump. View D pretty much gets used on all the other horizontal pumps. View A and B get used on the multi-stage pumps, the vertical multi-stage pumps. Now, the composite jet, this is for shallow well use only. When you're using the PL series, and you can see that's the only series of pump that's in there, based on the horsepower, we'll decide which one of these jets you're going to use. The 21 is the half, the 24 is the 1.5. So if you want to use that PL series pump as a shallow well, that's how you're going to do it. Sprinklers and centrifugal pumps are next. And again, here's some pictures. There's the QP pump. There's the D series pump, the CT, CB, and there's your PL series pump. All right. Now, this is the air motor pump, and you're going to notice again they've got a series that starts out here. So SPC is a series, SPCA, CT, DMC. Those are all series of pumps. All right. They do use on some of their pumps a letter to indicate the head. So M means medium head, H means high head. If there is not a head letter there, it's going to be a high head pump. All right? Because most people want that high head, that high pressure. The next one here is your motor type. You'll only find that if you're using 3-phase or TEFC. There's nothing there if it's single phase. And then, of course, that last number is your horsepower. And you can see here, 50 is half, 75 3/4, 101, 150 1.5, 202, 303, 500 5 horsepower. So that's your air motor line. On your Berkeley line, we've got a CP1 XPHS and a 10 LTHH3. All right. 10 is going to be your horsepower number. Now you'll notice you don't see a horsepower number in that CP pump. CP pumps are sold strictly through catalog numbers. So when you go to pick the pump in the price pages, you'll find the catalog number. It's even in the catalogs, there'll be a catalog number. That catalog number will indicate the horsepower. But with your LT pumps, that's a model number. And so because it is a model number, you can see that it tells you the horsepower there. So 10 is 1 horse, 5 is half, 7 is 3/4, 15 is horse and a half, 20 is 2, 25 is 2.5, and 30 is 3. Now, when you get into some of your bigger pumps, they also use 3 and 5 for 3 horsepower and 5 horsepower. So it can get a little confusing here. The LT, there's LTHH, there's SSHM, there's BPD, there's LT, there's SCX, there's CP, CB, and C. There may even be a couple more I couldn't fit on there. So, but those are your series of pumps. Most of those are sprinkler pumps. The CP, CB, and the C series are straight centrifugals. And then that second letter there is the head. So you've got H for high head, M for medium head. Remember what that means. Medium head means I'm going to get more flow, less pressure. High head means I'm going to get less flow, more pressure. That's the difference in them. All right? And then in your model number, sometimes it will tell you whether it's 3-phase or not. Remember, if nothing's there, it's single phase. All right? I will also tell you all of your centrifugal pumps, including the sprinkler pump, that 10LTHH3 are going to be sold through catalog numbers, but at least you'll understand. The CP1, the 1 is the discharge size. So you'll get a 1, you'll get a 1 1/4, and a 1 1/2. And they're telling you the discharge size of the pump. Now, Myers, we've got a QP10-3 and a CT10B3. Once again, Myers has a relatively short list here. There's the QP pumps. Those are definitely Myers pumps. The PQP is really the PD series. So that's the Stay Right pump painted green. And then the CT is their version of the straight centrifugal pump. All right. Horsepower, they follow their horsepower continuous here. So 5 is half, 7 3/4, 10 is 1, 15 is 1 1/2, 20 is 2, 30 is 3, 50 is 5. Now you'll notice the B after the CT, and the reason for that is because that pump can have a brass impeller in it. So you can get it with a plastic or a brass. If you don't put the B in there, you're getting a plastic impeller. And of course, the 3 at the end of both of those numbers indicates 3-phase. If it's not there, they are single phase. Stay Right, we've got a DHG-L and a JME3-01. All right. And again, you've got your series number, DS3. They make a DS2. There's the PD, the D, the CC, the J, the DPC. You could go on. There's more. A head letter. Stay Right always uses a head letter. So you've either got a H for a high head pump, M for a medium head pump. Typically on your sprinkler pumps, most of those are going to be high head. When you get in your 3 and 5 horsepower, you can get a medium head. But on all your 2.5 or less horsepower sprinkler pumps, they're going to be high head only anymore. Now, mind you, I've been around long enough to remember the day when they did have medium head and low head pumps, but they don't anymore. Horsepower, again, they're going to follow their A.O. Smith predecessor who put them in charge here with using alpha characters for horsepower. So C will be half, D is 3/4, E is 1, F is 1 1/2, G is 2, H is 3, J is 5. Now you notice I skipped over the 2.5 horsepower. That's because what they're going to do with the 2.5 horsepower, and you will find it in the J series, you will find it in the D series. They're going to throw in an extra head letter. So it'll be a DHHG if it's a 2.5 horsepower. DHG would be a 2 horsepower. DHHG would be 2.5 horsepower. A JMMG. So if you have an extra head letter with the G, that's going to be your indication that it's a 2.5 horsepower. Now they will tell you the motor type again. 3 is 3-phase. If it's not there, it's single phase. All right. T is TEFC motor. And then you've got a manufacturer's revision number and a UL listing here. Okay? Not all, but most of our pumps are CSA approved. If they meet CSA, they generally meet UL because CSA is a little tougher than UL. Okay? CSA is the Canadian standard. Some features here: interchangeability, motors, impellers, diffusers, pressure switches, parts packs, modified standards. Now, modified standards are one-offs. In other words, you're changing the pump a little bit. You're doing something a little different to it. Remember, I said that MS series pump is strictly deep well. There are a few occasions out in the Carolinas they use them a lot. I see them in a few other places too, where they're going to use that MS series pump as a sprinkler pump. They're going to plug the drive hole, which is the one that's offset, not the one in the center, and they're going to use it as a shallow well pump. Of course, they're not going to put a jet in it because it doesn't have a shallow well jet. And what that means is they're going to get lots of water, and because they're a three-stage pump, you're going to get lots of pressure out of them. Now, of course, in doing so, you run the risk of running too much water through there, because without a jet on there to control the flow, you wind up with a lot of flow. And if you get too much flow out of there, what winds up happening is you wind up with the motor burning up. So we make a modified standard where we put a higher horsepower motor on the pump, and then you've got a little more oomph in that pump, so you can get a little more out of it. And that's what modified standards means. Everything else, interchangeability, you can change motors out. You can change impellers out. You can put a new diffuser in if you need to. Serviceability, there is a drain port for ease of servicing and winterizing. Remember, if you live in an area where it freezes, pumps don't like frozen water. That has a tendency to break them. So you want to winterize them by draining them. And there's a drain plug on all of our pumps so that you can, and it'll be at the lowest area so that you can drain that water out, get all of it out, okay? We do make a back out construction. Now what this allows you to do is it allows you to pull the motor and the internal components off out of the back of the pump. That means you don't have to disturb the plumbing. You can leave the volute case or the pump body, depending on which kind of pump you've got, hooked up, and that way you can take it out and you don't have to worry about disturbing your piping. Now, of course, I will warn you to make sure that you're supporting that piping, because the bottom line is those pump bodies, if they don't have something supporting them, they can get pretty heavy on that piping, and that can cause a problem when you go to put that thing back together. Okay? This is just a little, we call it an exploded view of our DS3, and it just shows you can replace parts. Everything's replaceable on there. So when we talk about that DS3, it's not called the DS3 in the air motor line, but they do have a very similar pump to it. It is fully cast iron construction. It goes 1 through 2.5 horsepower. It is a high head model only. As I mentioned, 25 years ago, they used to make a medium and a low head version of it. Now it's only high head. At 5 feet to water, now notice here we're at 30 psi because it's a sprinkler pump. So you'll get 33 gallons at 30 psi out of the one. The 1.5 will give you 53 at 30, and the 2 horse will give you 60 at 30. It is interchangeable with the previous DS2 series. The suction and discharge hole in the DS2 is in the exact same place as the DS3. So therefore, you can change one right out. It doesn't make a difference. Okay, 2.5 horsepower is 70 gallons a minute at 30 psi. Your sprinkler pump PD, and again that P means that it is a composite construction. So you've got a glass reinforced body and seal plate on that pump. It's 1 to 2.5 horsepower. Of course, because it is glass reinforced plastic on there, it's corrosion resistant. Now, it doesn't mean that you can use this in saltwater applications, because we do get calls every once in a while where somebody says, I have a fish farm and I need to pump salt water. I'm not going to say it won't pump salt water. I'm just going to tell you the mechanical seal won't last, because the mechanical seal used in here actually evaporates the water going through it. So as the water goes through that mechanical seal, what winds up happening is you wind up with a salt residue that eventually causes the seal to leak. So even though the pump itself is corrosion resistant, that mechanical seal doesn't work well with salt water. as I mentioned, glass reinforced body. There's a priming and gauge port up on top. 5-foot priming performance. At 30 psi, 1 horse is 35, the 1.5 is 48, the 2 is 50, and the 2.5 is 66. So you can see there's some very similar performance to that cast iron version. The D series pump, and this picture here is the 5 horsepower. Cast iron construction, big rugged pump. You see the big forehead on there, that was really made for priming. Okay, it's a general purpose centrifugal pump. What they mean by that is, while we do offer it as a sprinkler pump, our pool division offers it as a pool pump. So it can be used for several different things. All right, it does come 1 through 5 horsepower. The medium head models go up to 143 feet at shutoff, or 146 gallons a minute at your best efficiency point. That's not the end of the curve. That's the best efficiency point. Your high head has a shutoff head of 163 with 115 gallons at your best efficiency point. Obviously, the pump will do more than that, but best efficiency is 115. They have Norel impellers in the 1 to 2.5 horsepowers and bronze impellers on the 3 and 5. You'll notice when you look at the front picture of that pump, let's go back for a second just to show you. Look at the front end of that pump. There's a square end on it, and there's no threads, which means you can't hook this up. First one of these I sold 22 years ago when I was in customer service. The guy bought the pump and was so happy. He gets the pump, opens it up, calls me back and says, "How do I hook this pump up?" And I said, "Well, don't you have a suction flange?" He said, "Well, you didn't offer it to me." So it's my fault that he didn't have a suction flange. The next thing I know, I'm next day airing a suction flange out. He's paying for the flange, but I'm paying for next day air. So that was the only time that mistake ever happened. Any time after that I saw a D-series pump, and remember, D-series goes 1.5 through 5. So anytime I sold a D-series pump, I made darn well ensure that that customer had one of the suction flanges. Now you see, as I mentioned, it can be used as a pool pump, so they do sell suction strainer baskets, either in 6 or 8 inch, or suction flanges. They're bolt-on, and they have an NPT thread on them, so you can thread the pipe in. The 52 and 53 are your 1.5 and 2 inch, and then the 72 and 73 are your 2.5 and 3 inch. I want you to know that I always recommend the biggest one. That's my recommendation. Always put the biggest one in. That way you know your pipe size is going to be okay for whatever you're asking the pump to do. As a matter of fact, you put that big one in on a 5 horse, you may want to increase your pipe size. The CC series is a centrifugal pump. Again, this one is sold only in the Stay Right line. It is a rugged cast iron construction. It is a general purpose centrifugal pump. Again, it can be used as a pool pump. You'll notice it's got the same bolt hole pattern as the D series, so if you wanted to bolt not the suction flange, because you can see that this one is threaded on the inside, but if you wanted to bolt a basket on there, you could. Okay, it comes as a 3 and 5 horsepower pump only. It only comes with a silicon brass impeller. A multi-purpose body means that if you take the bolts out of the seal plate there, you loosen that seal plate up, you can pull that body off and turn it and move that discharge in any direction that you want to move it to. Okay, it's got a high GPM performance. It comes in a medium head and a high head model. The medium head is 75 feet of head or 200 gallons a minute. Now that's at the end of the curve, that's not at the BEP, just so you understand that. High head models are 100 feet of head or 250 gallons a minute. Again, you're at the end of the curve and you have a 5 horsepower here. Okay, I love this little pump here. It's called the DPC. I take credit for saving the pump. Back in the early 90s, this pump was under the SSE group, and it's got many uses. It is a little self-priming pump. You can use it to drain water beds, aquariums, pump water out of a basement if you got a flooded basement. So it's a nice little handy pump in that respect. We had a guy that was using it in Michigan, and the product manager at the time decided that he wanted to use a less expensive pump, because this one is a little expensive to make. It's all cast iron construction, so he wanted to do a plastic version of the pump. And he didn't use that good A.O. Smith motor on there. Instead, he used what is called a brush motor. Of course, if you've ever worked with a brush motor, you know they tend to be very loud. And so the guy who bought these out in Michigan said, no, I'm not using that HC pump. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but we don't sell the DPC anymore. And the guy says, Bill, I got to have that DPC pump. And I said, well, let me see what I can do. So I called the product manager up, and I said to him, I've got a customer that wants this DPC pump. And he says, Bill, we're not selling it no more. I'm telling you, it's done. It's obsolete. And I said, well, let me ask you this question then. He's willing to buy the rights to the pump from us and make it himself. And he says, oh, no, we're not going to do that. And I said, well, if you're not going to sell him the rights to the pump, and you don't want to make the pump anymore, that's not really fair. Give him a number. And so he finally says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. He has to buy 200 pumps at a time. He has to order 200 pumps at a time, and he gets a 4/8 multiplier. Now he's thinking the guy's going to say, no way. And I called the guy up and said, yes, it's a done deal. And that saved that pump. Of course, the good news for me was that in 1.5 to 2 years, the HC pump, which was so noisy, got to the point where people didn't like it so much, and so they went back to the DPC and dumped the HC. It is a cast iron construction. It is a 1/2 horsepower split phase motor only. Now, it's not a brush motor. It's a split phase motor, 115 volt. It's got a built-in check valve. You can see right on the front there. It is self-priming, 62 feet ahead at 40 gallons a minute. Now again, 62 feet ahead is shut-off head. 40 gallons a minute is maximum flow, so you're not getting 62 feet at 40. You're getting 62 feet or 40, okay? It uses a semi-open impeller, which makes it a good pump for effluent use. And so you will find that this pump also gets used as an effluent pump. It's sold through the Berkeley line in Canada, and they use it a lot up there for effluent, and I think that's what this guy was using it for too. It's got a polycarbonate impeller, which of course means you don't want to deadhead this pump. You let this pump run at deadhead for about 15 minutes, you'll be replacing parts on the inside. The J series centrifugal, and I'm gonna say this includes the CT from Myers, it includes the CT from Air Motor, it includes the CPCB from Berkeley. They're all straight centrifugal pumps. Okay, they've all got a cast iron construction. They range somewhere from 1/3 to 2.5 horsepower. They have a multi-position body like the C series pump. You take the bolts out of this thing, you can turn that body and reposition the discharge so it'll point any way that you want it to. They do have it in medium and high head models. Now the medium head models have a shut-off head of 110 or a flow rate of 140. Now remember, that's out on the end of the curve. You probably really don't want to work there, but that's the flow rate that they give you. Your high head pumps have a shut-off head of 140 with a maximum flow of 90. Again, they are transfer pumps. They're used a lot all over the place. You can use them as a booster pump. They do have lift to them. I've seen them being used as sprinkler pumps too. I get a little concerned because, of course, if they lose prime, you're replacing parts. But a very, very good, handy little pump. All right. If it's just the J series, it's got the Norel impeller. If it is the JB series, it's going to have a bronze impeller. Now, of course, Norel means we're only going to go to 140. Bronze means you can go to 225. Yes, that means you can pump steam with it. Okay. Any questions at all? All right, not hearing any questions, I do want to remind you that we do have a survey, and your opinions are very important to us. We make our webinars based on what you're suggesting to us, and so if you can give us a suggestion, we'll certainly take it. Our next webinar, it'll be coming up here in a little bit. So thank you so much for paying attention and for being with us. I really appreciate it. We'll see you on the next webinar. Take care now. Bye.